President Trump just made his most detailed announcement yet about sending $2,000 checks to Americans. And this time, he didn't just talk about the amount. He gave us a timeline. He gave us income limits, and he explained exactly where the money would come from. If you've been wondering whether this stimulus is real, whether you qualify, and when you might actually see money in your account, stay with me because I'm going to break down everything you need to know. I'm David Chen, and I specialize in explaining government programs and benefits in plain English. I've spent years helping people understand Social Security, Medicare, tax policy, and economic relief programs. My goal is simple: give you accurate information so you can make smart financial decisions. If you're new here, welcome. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing where my audience is located across the country, and if you've been here before, thanks for coming back. I appreciate your support. Today we're diving deep into Trump's stimulus proposal. I'm going to show you the actual quotes from the president, the analysis from major news organizations, the budget math that has experts skeptical, and most importantly, whether you should actually be counting on this money. Let's start with what President Trump said most recently, on November 17, 2025. While speaking to reporters in the Oval Office, he provided the clearest details yet. According to WCNC and multiple other news outlets, here's his exact quote: "We are going to be issuing dividends later on, somewhere prior to, probably the middle of next year, a little bit later than that, thousands of dollars for individuals of moderate income, middle income." Notice he said thousands of dollars, plural. Not just $2,000, but potentially more. He's been escalating this number over time, which I'll explain in a minute. The same day, at a different event, Trump said, "We have taken in trillions of dollars and it's been absolutely amazing. We're going to be doing a dividend to the people, low and middle income, moderate income people of at least $2,000. So let me give you the key facts we know right now. Timeline: mid-2026, possibly slightly later. We're looking at roughly 6 to 8 months from now. Amount: at least $2,000 per person, possibly more. Who qualifies? Low and middle income Americans. High earners would be excluded. Income limit: Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Fox News that families making less than $100,000 would qualify. The source of funding: tariff revenue collected from imported goods. Now, here's where this gets interesting and why I want to give you the full context. This isn't the first time Trump has talked about stimulus checks. Let me walk you through the timeline of how we got here, because understanding the evolution of this proposal is crucial to understanding whether it will actually happen. It started back in July 2025. According to news reports, President Trump first floated the idea of sending Americans a $600 dividend from tariff revenue. That was a specific number based loosely on one of the COVID-era stimulus payments. Republican Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri took that idea and drafted actual legislation called the American Worker Rebate Act. In Hawley's press release announcing the bill, he was very specific about the structure. He said the rebates would provide tariff rebate checks to American workers and families with similar parameters to the direct payment passed by Congress in 2020. This is important because those 2020 payments went to everyone: working adults, retirees on Social Security, people on disability, children, everyone who met the income requirements. The income thresholds back then were $75,000 for individuals, $112,500 for heads of household, and $150,000 for married couples filing jointly. Senator Hawley's bill specified that the rebates would be at least $600 per adult and dependent children. So from the very beginning, this was designed to include seniors, disabled individuals, and kids, not just workers. Then in October 2025, Trump increased the proposed amount. According to Fox News reporting, he started talking about $1,000 to $2,000 checks. The number was getting bigger. By November 9, 2025, Trump solidified on $2,000. He posted on Truth Social that Americans would receive a dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people. And now, as of November 17th, he's saying thousands of dollars and at least $2,000, suggesting the amount could go even higher. So the trajectory is clear: $600 to $1,000, to $2,000 to at least $2,000 to potentially more than $2,000. The question is, why does the amount keep increasing? And more importantly, can the government actually afford this? Let me show you the math because this is where things get complicated and where experts are raising serious concerns. According to CNN's analysis, Trump's new tariffs are projected to raise $158 billion in 2025 and another $207 billion in 2026. So we're talking about roughly $365 billion total over 2 years from new tariffs. Add in pre-existing tariffs, and according to Treasury Department data, the government collected about $195 billion in customs duties in fiscal year 2025. Now let's look at the cost of sending out these checks. The Tax Foundation, a nonpartisan research organization, ran several scenarios. Here's what they found. Scenario 1. If checks only go to tax filers and their spouses, with an income cutoff at $100,000, the cost would be approximately $279 billion. Scenario 2. If checks go to tax filers, non-filers, spouses, and dependents, essentially everyone, the cost could reach $606 billion. Do you see the problem? Even in the cheapest scenario, the cost is $279 billion. The projected tariff revenue for 2026 is $207 billion. The math doesn't work. Now, Trump has said he wants to use tariff revenue for 3 purposes: send dividend checks, pay down the national debt, and offset the cost of his tax cut bill. He cannot do all 3 with the revenue being collected. According to billionaire investor John Arnold, as reported by Newsweek, sending $2,000 to every American adult except the top 5% would cost $513 billion. That's more than the combined tariff revenue from 2025 and 2026. So where would the additional money come from? That's the question nobody has answered yet. Treasury Secretary Bessent told ABC News that the dividend could come in lots of forms, in lots of ways. He suggested it might not be direct checks but could instead be things like eliminating taxes on tips, eliminating taxes on overtime, or eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits. If that's the case, you wouldn't get a $2,000 check deposited into your account. You'd see reduced taxes throughout the year, which could add up to $2,000 in savings. Now let me explain why many experts are skeptical this will happen, at least in the form of actual checks. CNN published an analysis titled, 4 Reasons You Probably Won't Get a $2,000 Check from Trump Soon and 1 Scary Reason You Might. Let me break down those reasons. Reason 1. The math doesn't work, as I just explained. There isn't enough tariff revenue to fund this unless Congress appropriates additional money, which would add to the national debt. Reason 2. Congressional support is uncertain. For these checks to go out, Congress must pass legislation appropriating the funds. Senator Hawley's bill hasn't gained much traction. Several Republican senators have publicly opposed the idea. Senator Mitt Romney's office called it insane. Others have said any tariff revenue should go toward paying down debt, not sending out checks. Without strong Republican support in both the House and Senate, this legislation won't pass. And so far, we haven't seen Republicans lining up to support it. Reason 3. Inflation concerns. Many economists worry that sending hundreds of billions of dollars in checks to Americans right now could worsen inflation. We're not in a recession. The economy is not in crisis mode the way it was during COVID. Injecting massive amounts of cash into the economy when people are already spending could drive prices up further. Academic research has shown that the COVID stimulus checks contributed to the inflation spike we experienced. The National Bureau of Economic Research found that 40% of the 2020 CARES Act stimulus payments were spent immediately, 30% went to paying down debt, and 30% was saved. If people spend this $2,000, it increases demand for goods and services. If supply doesn't increase proportionally, prices go up. That's basic economics. Treasury Secretary Bessent acknowledged this concern. When asked by Fox News how the administration would prevent inflation, he said, "Maybe we could persuade Americans to save that, because one of the things that's going to happen next year is the start of Trump accounts to save for kids." So even the Treasury Secretary is worried about people spending the money rather than saving it. Reason 4. The Supreme Court case. This is the wild card that could make everything irrelevant. The Supreme Court is currently reviewing the legality of how Trump imposed many of these tariffs. He used emergency powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose tariffs without going through normal trade channels. The court heard arguments in November 2025, and they appeared skeptical of the administration's legal justification if the court rules that Trump exceeded his authority. The administration may have to refund tens of billions of dollars to businesses. That would eliminate a huge chunk of the tariff revenue. The Supreme Court term ends in June 2026. Notice that Trump said the checks would come around mid-2026. That's not a coincidence. He's waiting to see how the court rules. If the court upholds the tariffs, the revenue stream is secure and the checks become more feasible. If the court strikes down the tariffs, there's no money for checks. Now, CNN mentioned one scary reason you might get the checks. That reason is economic crisis. If the economy goes into recession, if unemployment spikes, if there's a financial crisis, then stimulus checks become an emergency measure rather than a political promise. In that scenario, Congress would be much more willing to pass legislation, deficit concerns would take a backseat, and inflation worries would be less relevant because you'd be trying to stimulate a failing economy. According to CNN's reporting, experts said, it is improbable the federal government will send out $2,000 checks next year unless it looks like the U.S. economy needs to be rescued from an imminent recession. So, the somewhat grim reality is, you're most likely to get this money if the economy crashes. Now let me address the question many of you are probably asking. If these checks do go out, would seniors on Social Security and disability recipients be included? Based on everything we know, the answer is yes. Here's why I'm confident about that. First, Senator Hawley's legislation explicitly modeled the rebates on the 2020 stimulus payments, which went to everyone including Social Security recipients, SSI recipients, SSDI recipients, and children. Second, Trump has consistently said individuals, not workers or taxpayers. He specifically mentioned low and middle-income people, which would include retirees living on fixed incomes. Third, excluding seniors would be political suicide. Seniors vote in huge numbers, and telling them they don't qualify for a benefit that children are receiving would create massive backlash. Fourth, the proposed income limit of $100,000 would include the vast majority of seniors. The average Social Security retirement benefit is about $1,907 per month, which is roughly $23,000 per year. Even seniors with pensions or investment income typically wouldn't exceed $100,000 unless they're quite wealthy. So yes, if these checks happen, seniors and disabled individuals should be included. However, and this is a big however, that's if the checks happen at all. And right now, there are serious reasons to doubt they will, at least as direct payments. Let me give you my honest assessment of the situation. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to give you the straight facts. President Trump clearly wants to do this. He keeps talking about it. He's provided more details. Treasury Secretary Dept has confirmed they're working on it. So the intent is genuine. However, there are massive obstacles. The funding doesn't fully exist unless Congress appropriates additional money. Congressional support is weak at best. Economic experts are raising inflation concerns, and the Supreme Court could invalidate a large portion of the tariff revenue. The most likely timeline is that nothing happens until after the Supreme Court rules in June 2026. If the court upholds the tariffs and if the economy shows signs of weakness, you might see legislation move forward in summer or fall of 2026. But I would not make any financial plans based on receiving $2,000 in 2026. Don't delay paying bills because you think stimulus money is coming. Don't make major purchases assuming this money will arrive. Don't count on it for your budget. If it happens, fantastic. It'll be a welcome boost to your finances. But if it doesn't happen, you haven't made decisions that put you in a difficult position. There's also a very real possibility that whatever does get passed looks nothing like $2,000 checks. It might be tax reductions spread out over the year. It might be smaller checks to a more targeted group. It might be different benefits altogether. Government proposals change dramatically between initial announcement and final legislation. Remember Trump's promise during his first term that Mexico would pay for the border wall? That didn't happen. Remember the repeated promises to replace Obamacare with something better? That didn't happen either. I'm not saying this to be cynical. I'm saying it because political promises and political reality are often very different things. So here's my advice. Stay informed, but stay realistic. Watch what happens with the Supreme Court case. Watch whether congressional Republicans start actively supporting stimulus legislation. Watch economic indicators to see if recession concerns increase. And most importantly, make financial decisions based on money you actually have, not money you might get. Now, before I wrap up, Let me address some common questions I've been seeing. Question 1. When would I have to file taxes to qualify? Based on the COVID stimulus structure, if this happens, it would likely be based on your most recent tax return, so your 2024 or 2025 tax return would determine eligibility. Question 2. Would I need to apply for this or would it be automatic? COVID stimulus was automatic if the IRS had your direct deposit information from your tax return or Social Security. The money was deposited automatically. If they only had your mailing address, they sent a check. Expect something similar if this happens. Question 3. Would this be taxable income? The COVID stimulus payments were not taxable. They were considered tax credits. Expect the same treatment here if it happens. Question 4. What if I owe back taxes or child support? COVID stimulus could not be garnished for most debts, but it could be taken for unpaid child support. Rules would likely be similar. Question 5. Would this affect my eligibility for other benefits like SNAP or Medicaid? COVID stimulus did not count as income for means-tested benefit programs. The legislation would likely have similar protections. But again, all of this is hypothetical until actual legislation gets passed. Let me also address the scams that are already happening. I've seen posts on social media claiming that $2,000 payments are going out right now in November 2025. This is completely false. Factcheck.org has specifically debunked these claims. No payments are scheduled. No payments are going out. Anyone telling you to provide personal information to claim your stimulus payment is running a scam. The IRS will never contact you by email, text, or social media asking for your information. All legitimate stimulus payments are automatic based on tax returns or Social Security information already on file. If you receive any message asking you to verify your information or claim a stimulus payment, delete it immediately. It's a scam designed to steal your identity or your money. To summarize everything we've covered today, President Trump has proposed sending at least $2,000 to low and middle income Americans funded by tariff revenue. The timeline is mid-2026 or later. The income limit would be around $100,000. Seniors, disabled individuals, and children would likely be included based on the proposed structure. However, there are serious obstacles: insufficient funding, uncertain congressional support, inflation concerns, and a pending Supreme Court case that could invalidate much of the tariff revenue. The most realistic scenario is that nothing moves forward until after the Supreme Court rules in June 2026. If the ruling is favorable and if economic conditions warrant it, you might see legislation in the second half of 2026. Do not make financial plans assuming this money is coming. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, you're not in trouble because you didn't count on it. Stay informed through credible news sources. Ignore social media claims about payments going out now. Watch for scams. And make decisions based on your actual financial situation, not political promises. That's the honest truth about Trump's stimulus proposal. I know some of you were hoping I'd tell you the checks are definitely coming and you should start planning how to spend them, but that wouldn't be honest, and my job is to give you accurate information, not false hope. If you found this analysis helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with anyone who's been asking about the stimulus checks. The more people who understand the real situation, the fewer people will make poor financial decisions based on misinformation. Drop a comment below and let me know. Do you think these checks will actually happen? Do you think they should happen? What would you do with $2,000 if you received it? Thanks for watching. I'll continue monitoring this situation and I'll bring you updates as soon as there's real news to report. Until next time, stay informed and stay smart with your money.